You've been just so I can grasp everything you've been saying here. Basically, this runaway Keynesian model that we've been following for quite some time is really coming to a head. You've predicted that the time is very short that you see we won't run into before we run into a real crisis, banking crisis, fiat crisis. And here you've got a manager of the IMF instructing governments all over the world to outspend their limits, and you're pointing out that will hurt all those people in the world who earn wages, who save their wages, and who are paid out either in pensions or Social Security, anything, because the debasement of the currency, lacking protection. So, and clearly, it seems like the keepers of the system aren't necessarily acting in the best interest of those majority of people who do earn and save and have a pension, that kind of thing. So I guess we need to get around to talking about how people can take care of their own household if the keepers aren't taking care of things in a way that's for our own good. Before we get to that, maybe you can talk to us. You mentioned the potential Biden presidency starting today. You've done some analysis looking forward on what you think the implications of that will be financially. So could you tell us some of the results of that research you've been doing?
Yes, sure. Basically, we've got the Congressional Budget Office has forecast the budget deficit for this current year. But that forecast was made before there was a sort of protection program for wages. And on top of that, I mean, that was about, 900 billion, something like that, or 700 billion. I can't remember the exact figures. And then you've got Biden's 1.9 billion rescue package. And that's just to rescue the economy from COVID. It's not to stimulate the economy to go any further. But if you add those three things together, you've got roughly 5.3 trillion of budget deficit on what has been proposed so far. And it is quite possible that by the time extra stimulus is put in place, such as the greening, if you like, of the American economy, which I know is very much on Biden's agenda, plus, investment to try and get the thing going and, get the economic recovery and all the rest of it. So really, we're looking at $5.3 trillion of deficit, budget deficit, before all that extra stuff comes through. Whether it comes through or not, I don't know. I suspect it won't at the end of the day. But to have a deficit of $5.3 trillion is like 25% of GDP. I mean, this is absolutely massive. And it is a continuance of something that I've said in the past, and that is that the American government is already stuck on a hyperinflationary course. And by that, I mean that the only way in which they can finance themselves is by printing money. There is no escape, I think, for the American government from that dilemma. And effectively, they're bringing that forward, I think, with a more socialist policy than we had under Donald Trump. Though how different it would be, one doesn't know. But all I would say is that the ultimate collapse of the currency is being brought forward by these excessive monetary plans. There is another aspect of this which I'd just like to go into. If you look at what's been happening to the savings ratio, or the rate of savings, there has been a spike up and it's coming down off that spike. And that spike was really identified with perhaps a combination of people not going out and spending, the helicopter money drop that you had in the tail end of last year. And there is a further proposal, I think, for $1,400 per adult in the Biden package. And so that rate will spike up again. But when that ends, let us assume that some sort of normality returns. And I don't mean economic reality. I mean reality in the sense that we can go out and actually do things, or we can go and try and find jobs or whatever it might be. That money is very excessive in terms of what people are used to holding. So they will reduce that stockpile, that hoarded money, if you like. Now that, I think, will put into the US economy a further $2.5 trillion of spending, compared with what had happened if these helicopter drops had not happened. Now, if you can imagine $2.5 trillion in an economy of around about $21 trillion, the effect of that will be on, the marginal effect of that on prices will be to drive them up quite sharply. So we then have a problem that when you see prices rising as an ordinary American, do you take the view that you should reduce your dollars in return for goods which you don't necessarily need immediately, but you might need in the near future? In other words, will you reduce your liquidity levels even further? The reason this is important is because this is the means by which monetary inflation is translated into price inflation. If you get a situation where, let's look at an extreme, let's say all of us citizens, I call myself an American citizen for the purpose of this example, if we all decide that we want to minimize our holding of dollar liquidity and go out and buy goods because goods prices are rising, goods and services prices are rising, then we're going to create yet further falls in the purchasing power of the dollar, because it's the purchasing power of the dollar that's going down, not prices that are rising. If anything, in real terms, prices are probably falling, but measured in dollars, because the dollar's going down the toilet, you have this problem that, we're sitting here with what little liquidity we've got left thinking, what on earth should we do with it? And the answer is, it's exactly the same as you had in Germany back in 1923. You just get what you can of your liquidity and go and spend it before the prices go even higher. And that, if you like, is the sort of final collapse in the purchasing power of any fiat currency. So to recap slightly, what I'm saying is that the effect of 2 helicopter drops plus being stuck inside has probably added something over $2.5 trillion of spending power in the consumer's hands. Now, a Keynesian economist will say, well, this is just what we need in order to get the economy going again. But the problem is the production for this excess demand isn't there. The production is all mired in supply chain problems, companies that have gone bankrupt, companies that can't borrow any more from their bankers because the bankers are trying to reduce their overall credit exposure, and so on and so forth. So you've got this mismatch. It's all very well putting $2.5 trillion of extra spending into the economy, but if you haven't got the production, you can see what's going to happen to prices. The only safety valve in this, of course, is the ability to buy product from abroad. So what we will see is that while the budget deficit looks like over $5 trillion, so will, once spending is normalized, if we can just put it that way for a moment, so will the trade deficit. That will rise to over $5 trillion as well. Now, what are the political implications of that? So, this is turning out to be an unholy mess. It really is. And I don't think it's going to be terribly long before the honeymoon with President Biden's moving into office. I think it'll be terribly long before suddenly they're running into huge, great difficulties.